enarkia en ologos, kai ologos en proston theon, kai theos en ologos. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, a God, divine. Well, how this verse is translated often depends heavily on the doctrine that the translator follows. But any type of scripture should be interpreted using another scripture and the context that the scripture is found in, rather than being seen through the eyes of the doctrine. So let's consider what John 1:1 is saying. Firstly, let's consider the history and the beliefs of the Jews. Now, in ancient times, and even today, many religions have had trinities or triads. There's Sami mythology, Ahuric triad, which is Ahura, Mazda, Mithra, and Apam Napat, which is a well-known one in Zoroastrianism. Then we have Greek, Roman, Egyptian varieties in each one. Norse triads such as Odin, Freyr, Thor. The Mahayana Buddhism triads, of which there are many Puranic triads. There have been many triads in history. However, Judaism was unique in following no triads and having a monotheistic pattern of worship. If we look at Deuteronomy 6:4, it shows us a little bit of a difference, well, a major difference actually, with other religions at the time, which all had multiple gods and often featured trinities or triads, even in Canaan. So Deuteronomy 6:4, it explicitly states, Shema Israel, listen or hear, O Israel. Yehovah Eloheinu, Jehovah Yahweh, Yehovah, your God, our God, Yehovah Echad, is one, is a singular. So, they did not believe in a trinity. Then we have Isaiah 42:8, where he states, Ani Yehovahu Shemi, Ukabodi la'acher lo eten utahilati lapa'shilim. I'm Jehovah, Yehovah Yahweh, however you want to pronounce the name. That is my name, and my glory will I not give to another. I won't share it, he's saying. Neither will I share, is the implication, my praise with these carved images, graven images, idols. This brings us back to John 1:1. Now, we're going to think about what is found in the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures, and then compare it here with the grammar found. And then we're also going to compare to the writings of John and compare it to other Greek writings in the New Testament. All right, enarkia en ologos. Enarkia is in the beginning, and the context here of this verse is in creation. It's starting from the beginning of all creation. Then it says, kai ologos en proston theon. There was the Logos, and he was with Theon, the supreme deity. The accusative masculine singular is used here, and it signifies a direct object of a transitive verb. So this is used in place of or theos. Now, though there are those that will say that is not true, but we will make a comparison with the writing of John. Proston is very important because this is a preposition which means it is translated in English as with, but it's a preposition and it's saying toward, facing. It implies that there are two people in this verse. So there's the logos, the word, and then there is the supreme deity, theon. It then changes the form kai theos and ologos, and the logos was a god. Now, if we were talking about the supreme deity here, there is no real reason for him to change the grammar form. He's using two different forms, theon and theos. He's also not using hotheos, the God, which would be the supreme God, another form of theon. Now, why does he do this? Now, it's to show that there are two persons that are being talked about. Now, there are those that will argue till they're blue in the face that that's not the fact. But let's look at John's writing style. Now, John uses this word theon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times in his writing. Every time, it's actually 12 times, not including John 1:1. So in John 1:2, it says again, proston theon, toward God. He was in the beginning with God, not God himself. John 1:18 says that no human has ever seen the supreme deity, theon, at any time. John 5:18, once again, theon. John 8:41, one Father, ekomen ton theon, Padre, right? John 10:33, make yourself out to be the supreme God, theon. To ask, theon. Proston theon, again in John 13:3. So there's no indication that theon is used for anyone except the supreme God. There are about 148 occurrences of theon in the Christian Greek scriptures, the New Testament. It's interesting that two pagan ideals are used when talking about theon in this criteria. Now, both of those occur in Acts 9:37, and then Acts 28:6. In Acts 9:37, if you read the context of the verse, the governor or the mayor of the city stood up to try and calm down the people, and they were on the verge of rioting due to their belief that Artemis had somehow been blasphemed or defamed. It uses the word here. Now, he uses theon, which is translated as goddess here, but it actually means the supreme God. Now, why is it used? Well, the first thing is that it is reporting the speech of a pagan. As the pagan said it, it's reported speech. Also, Artemis was considered to be the supreme deity of Ephesus. That's why she's addressed as theon. Acts 28:6. Here it says, auto enai theon, he must be a god And this is also, this is when the Apostle Paul was in Malta and he was bitten by a snake. Now the Maltese, they thought that he would die, basically, that he'd swell up or he'd suddenly drop dead. Nothing happened, so they said he must be the god. Probably they thought that he was Zeus, who had become a human, and thus they used that. Maltese were also pagans, so it makes sense that they would use this word in their perspective. Both these words are used only in this case when they're talking about gods from the pagan perspective of being supreme. These are the only two occurrences that I could find that theon was used in this way. Then we have theos. Theos is used for whatever can in any respect be likened to God or resembles him in any way. Hebraistically, it's equivalent to God's representative or vicegerent or magistrate, judges, if we see in John 10:34, and which is along with Psalm 81, verse 6. Interestingly, ho theos means the supreme God, but it's also used to talk about the devil in 2 Corinthians 4, verse 4, where it calls him the ruler of the world. He is the God of the world. So in the context, he is the ruler of the world, and that therefore he is being used as theos, but also the theos, which is interesting, but it's not called the theon, interestingly enough. It can also be used, this theos can also be used for a person or thing to which one is wholly devoted, or for which one lives so pleasure, or anything really can be a god to a person. It's used in a more general sense. So Philippians 3 verse 9 is a good example of that. Now there's other verses that can help us to cross reference whether we should translate this as God or a God. We have John 14 verse 28, where Jesus says that he would go to the Father, proston pater, once again toward, directly. And he says there, oti o pater maison mo estin, the Father is greater than I am. The word what we see translated as with proston in John 1:1 is a physical presence. If we have a look at Acts 10 verse 38, we can see it says here, if I get my pen out, Oti Chotheos, the supreme deity used here again, the supreme God. Oti Chotheos en met auto. So here we have en met, which is, we have the imperfect indicative en, and we have the preposition met. This denotes something, not just a preposition, but also together, especially in the sense of a supporting role, a help. So if John 1:1 were to be translated as with God in a situation where there's not two people, it would be probably better to use en met. So why didn't he? Well, because it was talking about two people in John 1:1. Therefore, pros ton theon. Then we have the example in John 14 verse 31, which is by that the world may know that I love the Father, and the Father gave me the commandment. Even so I do. Arise, let us go hence. And this command, the word we are using, shows that the Father is from a higher position. Then we have 1 Corinthians 11 verse 3, which clearly shows that the position of different individuals is different. So we have thelo de umas edenai oti pantos, autros en kafale, or Christos estin. So the head of every man is, I should say, anthropos. The head of every man is Christ. Kefale de chonaikos, or anir. So the head of the woman is the man. And then we have something very interesting. Kafale de to Christo ho theos. The head of Christ is God. Once again, Colossians 1 verse 15. We have the word here used, eikon, ton theo. And then we have parato, which is invisible or unseen. And interestingly, prototokos, which is the firstborn of something. We see this used also in Colossians 1 verse 18 and Revelation 1:5. So the firstborn is used in the sense of the first thing to be produced. And therefore, the first thing that is produced is a creation. Then again, we have 1 Corinthians 15 verse 27, which shows that all things are made subject to him, but that he, which is the theos, is not made subject to Christ. Interestingly, in John 8 verse 17 and 18, we see here that in both cases, in verse 17 and 18, he calls to question, in his own defense, the Lord. So it says, the more with the law, ote duo anthropon, anthropone, I should say. All right. And so by the witness of two, we're talking about here, two men are required to be witnesses for a legal case. And he's saying, I bear witness here about myself, and the Father that sends me bears witness. Therefore, legally, we have two to bear witness. These scriptural verses show that the best way to translate this, seeing as we have proston theon towards the supreme God, the only one, there was the logos, the word, and then kai theos and ologos, the word was a God in a lesser sense, reflecting the supreme God, or that the word was in nature similar to the other one, and therefore the word was divine. So it would be better to translate it as, and in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was a God, or the word was divine.